Clement, the Vice President for Student Affairs, and I'm your host today for this recognition service. I'm very glad to be here. Please stand for the presentation of the colors by the Maryland Honor Guard and remain standing for the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner by MannerMusik. Thank you.
Present colors. Colors. Post. Ready, cut. Right, face. Forward, march. Left, left, right, left.
Continue standing as we welcome students from the College Park Academy who will lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance. Students begin. Thank you, students, for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you to the Honor Guard, the College Park Academy students, and MannerMusik. Students, please return to your seats. Please be seated for the invocation. This reflection will be offered by Adnan Zayber from the Muslim Students Association.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. May his peace and blessings be upon his prophets, messengers, and all those that follow in their blessed path. Today, we commemorate the brave men and women who have sacrificed so much in service of this great nation. We show our highest gratitude to them for their courageous acts that ensure the safety and liberty that define us as Americans. As our veterans continue to fight on the front lines for us, it is important that we draw inspiration from them and follow their example by serving in our own capacity. Whether it is removing something harmful from the road or assisting an elderly neighbor, our own faiths call us to be productive members of society. In a world so torn by grief, pain, and hatred, we need to take action by joining hand in hand to engage in selfless acts of service as demonstrated by the men and women in uniform. Perhaps we can never serve in the same way our veterans serve us, but we can try by practicing kindness and caring for one another. Today and every other day, we honor and show complete appreciation to our veterans who continue to fight for the great values of this country. As President Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And our veterans are shining examples for what it takes to do for our country. Their hard work and dedication serves as an example that we take part in a battle of our own and also benefit our own communities because, ladies and gentlemen, we too are agents of change. God bless our veterans. God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adnan. Today we are celebrating the University of Maryland veteran community. We extend our gratitude to the UMD veterans who have returned from service and active duty military serving at the present time. We remember dedicated and courageous University of Maryland veterans who have passed away, some of them in the line of duty. In 2017, we especially recognize the TERP Vets Student Organization celebrating its 10th year as a service and social group for student veterans. Also worthy of special recognition this year is the UMD Army ROTC, which celebrated its 100th anniversary on campus at the end of the month, September. The University of Maryland is well known for its support of student veterans. In a study conducted by the organization College Factual, UMCP recently was ranked number three among four-year institutions in the 2018 list of best colleges for veterans. Let us give a round of applause for TERP Vets, the Army ROTC, and our University of Maryland's commitment to veterans. Ever since its beginning, this memorial chapel has honored University of Maryland veterans and served as a place where veteran achievements can be recognized. Today's event marks the 10th annual University Celebration of Veterans, with programs that took place throughout this past week to bring together veterans and raise campus awareness of veteran contributions. Our service this afternoon consists of honoring and remembering veterans. We will start with honoring the veteran service experience through the personal reflections of two members of the UMD veteran community. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce our first veteran speaker, Jan Atwood. Jan served in the United States Army and the U.S. Army Reserves for over 25 years. She began her career as a Morse code interceptor for the Women's Army Corps, then continued military intelligence and security. Her duty assignments included Fort Meade, Maryland, West Germany, and South Korea. While still an Army reservist, Jan came in contact with the University of Maryland, receiving a master's degree in recreation in 1989. Her early work as a civilian was based on recreation, but she then transitioned to using her military intelligence and security background as a federal contractor. Jan retired from the military in the year 2000 from her government work 12 years later, taking time to travel. Recently, she's been back at school. In December, she will complete her classes, become a Master Watershed Steward for Anne Arundel County. Jan, we welcome you.
Dr. Clement, distinguished guests, friends, veterans, students, and any that may still be serving, thank you so much for having me speak today. It's a great honor. I want to wish my brother and sisters from the Marine Corps a happy anniversary, 242 years is a great accomplishment. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the changes for women in the Army over about 40+ years, because that's what I know. If any of you in here enlisted in the military, you know you took a battery of tests called the ASVAB test. I don't know what the acronym stands for, but you know the battery of tests. So we took this battery of tests, and since I was a college graduate at the time, I scored rather high on the exams. So the recruiter said, "We have somebody we want you to talk to." So they ushered me into this really plush room with nice furniture and everything to speak to the ASA recruiter. ASA was for Army Security Agency. Now there's going to be a theme to a lot of the things I tell you about today, because it's kind of dangerous to be around me, because things close to me cease to exist or close. So there is no more Army Security Agency. As you know, the Women's Army Corps actually devolved from the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps in World War II, and then it became the Women's Army Corps. And that went on until the disestablishment in 1978, when women were put into actual branches within the Army. So, as you know, the Women's Army Corps no longer exists. So after I joined the WAC, and when I joined the Women's Army Corps, I couldn't get, at the time I tried to get a teaching job after graduation. There weren't a lot of jobs out there, and there were a lot of candidates for jobs. So I said, what am I going to do for a career? So I actually enlisted in the Army, and it was a post-Vietnam wartime. So the draft had discontinued. So recruiters were really anxious to get women into the service and meet their quotas. And women came in droves, which was really satisfying. So I went to basic training at Fort McClellan, Alabama. At that time, it was all female training. They had some male drill sergeants because they were looking towards the future, and they knew that they would eventually merge in their training. So just to let you know, Fort McClellan ceased from being a basic training facility. So when I was at Fort McClellan, you get to talk to your platoon leader, and it was a first lieutenant, and she said to me, "Why aren't you an officer?" And I said, well, they didn't exactly offer me a commission when I went to the recruiters. So at that time, there were only 4 ways to become a female officer in the Army. They had a program called the College Junior Program, and that was after your junior year in college, you went to Fort McClellan for some training, and upon graduation from your university with your degree, you were commissioned as a second lieutenant. The second was OCS, similar to what the males went through, except all of their training was all female and at Fort McClellan. There was an in-service direct commission. That's the way I got my degree, because I had already served as an enlisted person, and I had my military degree, my college degree. So I was an in-service direct commission. And the 4th way was they took female civilians straight out of civilian life, and if they had a degree, they came in as a second lieutenant. Some came in as first lieutenants because they had master's degrees already and had been out in the community. So I took advanced individual training called AIT at Fort Devens. Those were co-ed classes. And despite me telling the recruiter, the ASA recruiter, that I wasn't particularly good at learning foreign languages, which is one of the jobs he offered me, I took Morse code. Well, to my chagrin, Morse code is a language, and I wasn't a particularly good student, but by the grace of God, I got through training, and because of my college degree and my education and teaching, they kept me as an instructor. And I was very lucky in that regard, too, because they came around to do boards for people to get their commissions. And that's how I was boarded and to get my commission. So I went back to Fort McClellan, but this time I was going through officer basic training. Then I went on to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and Fort Devens, Massachusetts. My first assignment as a second lieutenant was in Korea. I was one of only 2 female officers in our unit. And I might say that the Army at that point was not really ready for prime time. And by that I mean they were getting an influx of women, but they hadn't yet prepared facilities enough. So I became very apt at flipping the sign on the restroom, and so to male, to female. And also I had to get up really, really early, because once the men commandeered the bathroom facilities, you couldn't get in there. So I would get up very early and prepare for work. So that was kind of typical in the early 70s, early to mid 70s. So I came back to, after my assignment in Korea, I came back here to the Fort Meade area. I was assigned to CONUS MI group. It no longer exists. But I started seeing, this is when I first started seeing a lot of ROTC and academy grads, the first class of women that graduated from the USMA, where it was 1980. And I saw a lot of parachute and air assault badges for people that they opened up those classes for women to go to. So they had earned their parachute, their jump wings and their air assault badge wings. So then after being assigned at Fort Meade, I went to more classes before my assignment in West Germany. I was first stationed outside of Frankfurt in a town called Höchst, and the assignment was with 533rd Combat Electronic Warfare Intelligence, or CEWI, Battalion. Well, as you can guess, there is no term for CEWI any longer, or the organization doesn't exist in the military anymore. So my second assignment in Germany, and I have to say was probably the best assignment I ever had, was as a commander of a small detachment on the East German border. Now that was before the wall came down, and I'm not saying that I had anything to do with that, but the wall no longer exists. So after 10 years on active duty, I requested relief from active duty, but remained in the Army Reserves for another 17 years. I used my GI Bill, as the doctors described, to attend the University of Maryland as a grad student. I was able to survive on my savings, my reserve pay, and thankfully a grad assistantship in the intramural sports department. Finally, I had to face the music and go to work. So I started out as I worked for a company called Airline Reporting Corporation. They review travel agencies to have airline ticket stock. But then one of the guys in my reserves said, "Hey, I work for a company and I think you'd be a good fit." So that's how I started working in the government contractor field in intelligence area. So in 1989, I graduated with that master's degree in recreation, and I have to say the day I graduated was in December, and it wasn't much unlike today as far as the weather goes. It was cold that day too. But as you know, I had a recreation degree. The major no longer exists here at the University of Maryland. So I retired from the Army Reserve in 2000, and that made me a gray area reservist. And what that means is, as a I retired with more than 20 years of service, but we, as a gray area reservist, you aren't eligible to receive your benefits until you turn the age of 60. So once I did that, I was able to get TRICARE, and I have TRICARE for life now, and my retirement pay was based upon points accrued from active duty and drilling in the reserves. So we were asked to talk about how we connected to the Veterans Center. So obviously, after retiring from the reserves and from my civilian job, I had more time. So I got reconnected through Amy from University Relations, and she said, hey, we have a lot of new things here. We even have a vet center now. I said, oh, tell me more about that. So I was able to visit the vet center where I met Terry Zacher and others, such as the other guest speaker, Marwin, and got to know the veterans better. So I started attending the veterans receptions. It was my pleasure to meet a lot of veterans, and especially to talk to the female veterans to see where they've come. As you know, we only recently got the combat exclusion rule lifted so that women can serve in all capacities. So the Army has had Rangers graduate. One of the females is a commander of an infantry unit. So they've come a long way, and I really enjoy hearing how far they come and all that they have been able to accomplish. I want to give a short public service announcement for an organization called the Women in Military Service for America. If you've never been there, it's at the base of Arlington Cemetery. However, it is not in any way related to the cemetery. That is just the location of the memorial. It's a women's memorial, and it's for all women who served. So if you yourself as a female have served, or you have a mother, aunt, cousin, sister, please enroll them there is no charge to do so, and we want to capture all women who have served their country in the military. So, and I also would want to congratulate the Vet Center on its 10th anniversary, and trust me, you'll have many more to come. Don't worry. And in closing, I would like to close by saying Happy Veterans Day to all my fellow vets. We must never forget those who have passed away in service to the country, giving the ultimate sacrifice. But Veterans Day is meant to celebrate all veterans. It does not matter how long, where you served, or in what role you participated, in peacetime or war. You will always be able to say, I'm a veteran. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, for sharing your reflections. We are certainly very proud to have you as one of our alums. Our second speaker today is Marwin Glenn, who is representing UMD Veteran students. Serving just over 16 years in the United States Marine, Marwin was stationed at posts worldwide. Most of his military career was centered in personnel. As a staff sergeant, he had the role for 7 years of administrative chief. Retiring from the Marines, Marwin made his way to the University of Maryland and earned his bachelor's degree this past May from the Robert H. Smith School of Business. At present, he is working on his master's in quantitative finance, also from the Smith School. Marwin is an active member of the TERP Vets student organization. As the team leader for peer advisors for veteran education, he assists UMD veterans transition from military to academic life. In addition, as an intern with the Student Affairs Development Unit, Marwin helps to raise funds benefiting veteran students on campus. Marwin, we're so pleased to have you today.
I would like to thank the university for inviting me here to speak today. It is an honor and a privilege to represent the student veteran population. Today, here at Veterans Day ceremony or Armistice Day. A special thanks to Dr. Terry Zacher, AKA Terry, who has been especially supportive of our veteran community. Without her and many others, our veteran community would not be successful as it is today and would not be celebrating our 10th year anniversary. Knowing the last time I volunteered, I ended up on the yellow footprints. So, when I told Terry today was my birthday, November 10th, she said, "It's okay." And that I said my speech could not be the traditional somber Veterans Day speech. Her reply was, "I would not expect that from you." So here I go. First, to my fellow veterans and college students, I know nothing's worse than to sit through a long, boring lecture. I can assure you this will be neither. Did I mention today's my birthday? So, come with me on a journey of one to change the world. One of my favorite quotes, and I paraphrase, "Some people live their entire lives wondering if they've made a difference. People who have served do not have that problem." This journey may have started with me in the military, but I can assure you, no matter if you have worn a uniform one day or not, no matter of your gender, your ethnic, your religious background, your orientation, your social status, our struggle in this world are similar. So come with me on my journey. I always knew that public service was in my future, but once I saw the movie The Dirty Dozen, my fate was sealed. I joined the military during peacetime. Yes, I know, I don't look that old. However, the only deployment you were looking forward to is the Mediterranean float, AKA MedFloat, or Operation Tandem Thrust, a joint US-Australian operation in the Pacific and Australia. Can you say all these have one great thing in common? Liberty. What a real diplomacy actually took place. But when our nation dialed 911, 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines Model, and others will follow, many men and women, citizens and non-citizens, all answered the call. A general said, "We must remember the past, honor those who are no longer with us, focus on today's battles, and get ready for tomorrow's. We can and will prevail in any climb and place." My very first experience with Turk Vets and peer advisors for veteran education was in the fall of 2014 during a Maryland Adventure Orientation Program led by veterans for veterans, where active duty personnel and veterans got together to participate in team building exercises. For 3 days and 2 nights, we kayaked and camped around Y Island. One of the many activities that rang true for me was an activity called What is on Your Plate, where we sat around the campfire and wrote down on paper plates some of our quandary, our dilemmas, our struggles that we are facing with starting a new chapter in our life. This exercise gave us the space to talk about our concerns and our fears and realize that some of them are the same. In 2014, a survey of Maryland student veterans, we know that 60% of us are married or currently living with partners. 2/3 of us have 2 or more dependent children. 60% of us have been deployed. I am one of those student veterans. I am a husband I have two beautiful daughters, Zoe and Ziva, and I have made that transition from military to civilian to collegiate life. After 16 years of service in places like Okinawa, Germany, Bahrain, I left everything I knew and the comforts to come back to school and earn my degree, and to be the first in my family to do so. I am one of the lucky ones who have successfully made that transition. Some of us did not make the transition as well, which results in nationally 22 veterans committing suicide daily. My support system has been my family, my Turk vet community, and my veteran community. There are still challenges. A challenge that I am facing today is moving from a model where I had absolute authority to one where I need to motivate and empower others to act. And according to my professor of BMGT 364, Managing People and Organizations, these are two different leadership styles. So technically, I'm ahead of the game. The challenge of balancing family and school is learning how to transition from a Master's of Finance class to being the parliamentarian at my PTO meeting for my kids' school. All these challenges are manageable because of my veteran community and the support of you all. I would like to thank you for being here. Let's celebrate our birthday. I ask that if you're able to stand as the melody plays. If you haven't realized it yet, through all my subtle hints, I am a Marine, Semper Fidelis. Hoorah! Please be seated. It is customary at the Marine Corps birthday celebrations worldwide to cut a cake in celebration of the birth of our luxurious Corps. The first piece of cake is given to our guest of honor, World War II veteran, Colonel Bill Vogel. It is also tradition to give the second piece of cake to the oldest Marine present. The oldest Marine present is Corporal Roy Corona, born in 1967 and joined the Marine Corps in 1984. The passing of the cake from the oldest to the youngest symbolizes the passing of history and tradition from one generation to the next. The youngest Marine present is Corporal Diamond Valentine. Corporal Valentine was born in 1991 and joined the Marine Corps in 2010. Happy 242nd birthday, Marines. Semper Fidelis. Hoorah!
On the Marine Corps birthday, I want to give tribute to my father, who was a Marine in World War I in France and survived. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marwin, for those wonderful words and this terrific tradition. We'll always remember it. At this point, we want to honor all UMD veterans as well as military currently serving. I ask Reverend Raymond Ranker, Lutheran chaplain, and Katie Evans of the Lutheran Student Association to come forward. Together they will light the honor candle and lead us in a moment of silence to reflect upon UMD veterans and the military around the world. Reverend Ranker.
We offer abundant thanks for those in the University of Maryland community who have served our nation. Also, we honor UMD alumni who are currently serving in the armed forces, the Air Force, Coast Guard, Marine Corps, Navy, and the Reserves. As we light this candle, we think of the UMD men and women currently defending our freedoms around the world.
Most of us know a relative, friend, or classmate who is upholding our nation's values through service in the military. We are reminded of the sacrifices they are enduring every day on our behalf and their hopes for a more free and peaceful world. Let us spend a moment of silence now to reflect upon the valiant work of these women and men serving at present in the armed forces.
In this very chapel today are men and women who have served, are currently serving, or intend to serve in the military. In just a few moments, we will invite you to turn to your neighbors and commend them for their service and sacrifice. If your neighbor is not in the military or a veteran, thank them for the service of a relative or friend in their lives. Soon after, you will hear a bell, and that will be a signal to return to your seats as we continue with our program. You are now invited to thank your neighbors.
No one serves in the military to be thanked, but it is appropriate that we, in sincere gratitude, give thanks to all those who serve our country in times of peril and in times of peace. Let us be encouraged and inspired by their sacrifice and deep well of fortitude and courage. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Ranker and Katie. We appreciate. To those of you currently in the military, you represent everyday reminders to your fellow Terps of duty, dedication, and discipline. You bring important life experiences and perspectives to the entire university community. To those veterans who have served in the past and are now University of Maryland students, staff, faculty, or alumni, we are grateful for your rich personal stories and points of view that you share with us. At this time, members of the Mighty Sound of Maryland will play an Armed Services medley. I ask all veterans and current military to stand and be recognized when their branch's theme is played. Family and friends are encouraged to honor the veterans in their lives by standing during the appropriate song. Thank you, Mighty Sound of Maryland. Aren't they great? Now we are moving to the remembrance portion of our Veterans Day service. MannerMusik will set the stage for remembrance with their moving version of Eternal Father, Strong to Save. Thank you, MannerMusik. Aren't they inspiring? We appreciate your being here. It is time to remember all UMD veterans we have recently lost. I call forward representatives from the Terp Vets Student Organization. The students will be reading aloud the names of 81 UMD veteran alumni who have passed away since October 2016. On the screen, you will see the names of these veterans. Their service to the nation spans decades and covers periods of both war and peace. After the reading, I invite you to reflect on all of the UMD veterans we have lost as UMD graduate student Ross McCool plays taps.
We lost these 81 veterans, all University of Maryland alumni, in the October 2016 to October 2017 time period. Dennis Alessi, Frank Baker, James Bannerman, Stephen Bernadine, Charles Bleish Jr., Thomas Burkowski, Alvin Brooks, Herbert Brubaker, Frank Brin, Carol Burton, David Cianelli, Billy Cooper, Andrew Corrado Sr., Carl Crow, George Daly, Jack Dalton, Robert Dawson, John Deberardinis, James Demas, George Douglas, and Thomas Dowd.
William Dunlap, Frederick Dunn, John Inyard, Richard Erickson, Jake Ferver, Margaret Filbert, James Fink, James Fitz, Paul Fogel, Wayne Phillip, William Gannon, William Gardner, Theodore Gochenor, Eugene Gogol, William Goodling, Lee Gordy, Edward Greenham, Paul Grove, John Gwynn, and Roland Hall.
Winfield Harward, Jr., Joseph Hauer, Frederick Hefner, Daniel Higgins, Jr., Arthur Hughes, Robert Hunt, Dwight Hurley, Ronald Hurley, Gershon Kext, John Kennedy, John Knight, Mary Lacey, Basil Lewis, David Lloyd, Lee Marshall, James McClellan, Richard Miller, Luis Montalvan, Arthur Parrish, and Conrad Posey.
Robert Ratliff, Lawrence Rohan, Marjorie Ross, John Reimer, Edward Schramm, Charles Scoggins, Arthur Shaw, Benjamin Silver, William Sonnenberg, William Taylor, Robert Thompson, Lawrence Tisserand, Jerry Walters, Harry Wells, Earl Williams, Jr., James Williams, Charles Wise, James Witkowski, Robert Worrell, Walter York, David Lloyd, Lee Marshall, James McClellan, Richard Miller, Louis Montalvan, Arthur Parrish, and Conrad Posey.
Thank you, Ross and Terp Vets. Today we've come together to honor the contributions and sacrifices of our University of Maryland veterans and servicemen and women. On behalf of the entire campus community, let me say that we value your contributions to our nation. In addition, we honor family members and friends who support veterans in their journeys. Let us give a round of applause for all of our UMD military and veterans and for everyone who is part of their lives. The formal part of our program will conclude with a benediction by Maryland Hillel student leader Talia Gordon and the playing of A Scottish Soldier by bagpiper and veteran Joseph Garrett. Will the audience please rise? I ask you to remain in place until the honor guard retrieves the colors and Talia begins the procession outside. I will ask our audience from the front rows to the back to continue the procession. The ushers will help to direct the first rows. The procession will end at the Garden Chapel patio, and we hope you will be able to join us for lunch. Given the chilliness of the day, there'll be seating available inside the Garden Chapel. During the lunch, please take the time today to walk the meditative labyrinth in honor of a veteran, past or present. A guide will be present to offer instruction if needed. Also, until 3 p.m. today, our Air Force, Army, and Navy ROTC units will be holding a vigil in the front of the chapel in honor of lost veterans. We are delighted that you've taken part in today's Veterans Recognition Service.
In Jewish tradition, we read one section of the Bible every week. This week's Bible portion comes from Genesis 23:1 to 25:18. Each portion of the Bible is referred to as a parsha, and this week's parsha is called Chaye Sarah, which directly translates to mean the life of Sarah. However, strangely, in this week's Bible portion, Sarah, the matriarch of all monotheistic faiths, dies. Many philosophers have grappled with the question of why a portion of the Bible in which Sarah dies is titled the life of Sarah. How can we possibly call this somber Bible portion the life of Sarah when in the second verse of the Bible portion it directly reads, "And Sarah died in Kiryat Arba," which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Abraham came to eulogize Sarah and to bewail her. Genesis 1:2. The answer to this question lies in how Sarah lived her life. Sarah lived her life deliberately, with meticulous purpose and meaning, always intending to serve God and help others around her. Sarah and Abraham would welcome guests into their house with open arms and gave meaning to a world that had not yet developed the sense of the idea of a community or society. In other words, Sarah was the first woman in the world to truly serve someone besides herself and give back to the world with understanding that there is something greater than herself. It is no coincidence that Veterans Day coincides with this week's Bible portion, because the meaning behind this holiday aligns perfectly with the meaning in Sarah, our matriarch's life. Our veterans are the most selfless people in this country. They give up time with their families in order to serve something larger, to serve the United States of America. Our veterans recognize that there is something greater than themselves and proudly fight for American values each and every day. Just like Sarah, those veterans who give up their lives in battle will be remembered long after they are gone because of their commitment to a goal larger than themselves. This week's Bible portion is titled The Life of Sarah because even after her death, she is remembered for the strong and influential leader that she was. So too, Veterans Day is a day in which we honor both the American soldiers who have given up their lives and those who proudly continue to fight in the name of our American values. As an American Jew, I'm immensely grateful to live in a country where men and women fight every day to uphold American values of democracy, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion. May God bless each and every one of these brave individuals who sacrifice their personal lives to give to the United States of America. May God continue to safeguard our soldiers, both domestically and abroad, and imbue within them a commitment to American democratic ideals. Thank you.